want to stop people from becoming victims of domestic abuse, which is why we're sharing information about Clare's Law. Clare's Law is also known as the Domestic Violence Disclosure Scheme. This law was introduced in 2014 and was named after Clare Wood, who was murdered by her ex-boyfriend. He had a record of violence against women, including domestic abuse. Through Clare's Law, we can tell you about your partner or ex-partner's criminal history as long as it's lawful, proportionate and necessary to do so. We are keen to ensure that you are aware of this right and aware that you can ask whether or not your partner or ex-partner poses a risk to you. This will allow you to make an informed choice as to whether or not to continue with the relationship. We want you to know that if you have concerns about a romantic partner and feel you may be at risk of harm, there's no shame in making a request under Clare's Law. All requests are dealt with sensitively, and we will establish a safe way to contact you. Any disclosure will be made face-to-face. If you are concerned that someone you know, such as a family member, a neighbour or a friend, may be at risk, you can also make an application, and the police will decide on who best will receive that disclosure, such as the person at risk or someone who it is considered is better able to protect that person from harm. Domestic abuse victims and offenders can be from any background, gender, ethnicity or sexual orientation. A request for information under Clare's Law can be made by visiting the Northamptonshire Police website or by calling 101.
It has been 15 years since Clare Wood was murdered in her home by her ex-boyfriend, George Appleton, who had a history of violence against women.
Clare had ended the relationship after it turned coercive. And she even made a statement to the police, but she was never informed of Appleton's abusive past.
In 2014, Clare's Law was introduced, allowing people to ask the police about a partner's criminal record. And now a BBC investigation has found that some forces are taking months to disclose information and large numbers of requests are being rejected.
Clare's daughter, Maddie, was just 10 years old when her mum was killed. She says the delays could be putting lives at risk now. Our investigative reporter, Caroline Bilton, has more.
The Salford woman, whose charred body was found in her own home, had been living in fear of her life for weeks.
Clare Wood was just 36 when she was brutally murdered by her ex-boyfriend at her home in Salford. Unbeknown to her, George Appleton had a record of violence against women.
The lad that killed my daughter had already done 5 years in prison for holding a young lady at knife point for 8 hours in Newcastle.
Somehow, through all their grief, Clare's family found the strength to campaign for a scheme that would potentially save lives, led by Clare's father, Michael Brown. In 2014, Clare's Law was introduced, and it would for the first time give people the opportunity to ask police for information about their partner's violent past. But 10 years on, a BBC investigation has found that the scheme is not working as well as it could.
Surely just a standard police check don't take 3 weeks to come back.
At this domestic abuse support group in Barnsley, some women here were unaware it existed.
There's not enough information about Clare's Law. I didn't know what it stood for.
I wouldn't have known. And I might have still been with him, and God knows what would have happened. Just needs to be out there more and make people more aware.
Over the past 5 years, there's been a 300% increase in applications, with over 45,000 requests made last year. But disclosure rates have fallen from 48% to 38%. And some forces took hundreds of days to respond when they're expected to respond within 28 days. But it's not just whether police respond to these requests. There's criticism of how they respond.
They invited me to the station for an interview. It was a tiny little room with a table in it. It was the kind of room that you'd see people being interviewed in when they're in custody.
This woman's experiences with West Yorkshire Police are portrayed by an actor.
It felt like the police weren't on my side. It felt like I was being treated with the suspicion that they should have been treating perpetrators of domestic abuse with. I didn't feel believed. It could be a really powerful tool for change, but we're reliant on the police using it in the right way, and that's not happening at the moment.
West Yorkshire Police say they follow the guidance set out by the Home Office, which was updated in April of last year. At police headquarters in North Yorkshire, they're taking on more staff to deal with the growing numbers of requests.
In the last few years, we've basically doubled the amount that we're looking at, which is a combination of obviously training. Partners are becoming more proactive in recognising opportunities. Our team are improving our practice constantly. We review our practice to make sure that we're not missing those opportunities because it's such an important scheme. When we recognise a high risk and urgent situation, those disclosures are prioritised.
Clare Wood never had the gift of knowledge that this scheme brings to allow her to make an informed decision about her relationship. But thousands of people are now benefiting from it. A lasting legacy that came from such tragedy. Caroline Bilton, BBC News.
We're joined now by our investigative reporter, Caroline Bilton. Morning, Caroline. Alongside Clare's daughter, Maddie Wood. Good morning.
Morning.
To you.
Morning.
You two have obviously chatted a lot and looked at kind of the responses from police and after this investigation. Caroline, I suppose it's kind of worth saying how you've been interacting with Maddie regarding this investigation.
Yeah, I mean, we've worked together, haven't we? And we've got a difficult line to walk today because we don't want to put people off, do we, from applying for a Clare's Law. This scheme, has the potential to really help people. And we want to stress this morning that anyone watching today, don't be put off from going to the police station and asking for a Clare's Law. You will be heard. But our investigation has found that depending on where you live in the country will be dependent on the response that you get. There are delays, basically, in how police are responding to this, and some are worse than others. So there's a bit of a postcode lottery is what we've discovered.
Maddie, you must be feeling pretty frustrated because your granddad campaigned so hard for this, didn't he? And this has been your life, really, since the age of... how old were you when you lost your mum?
So I was 10 years old.
10. So just when you heard all the statistics and you heard the kind of the delays in the response, how did it make you feel?
It was frustrating because my granddad worked so hard to get this into law. It took him a long time, along with Michelle Livesey. They worked together, they took a long while. And it's just frustrating to hear that it's not being used to its full potential because it needs to be implemented in every way we possibly can, to every potential we possibly can, to make sure it saves as many people as possible.
Have you managed to put in your mind, and I would never be able to even begin to understand what you've been through, the fact that something like this wasn't in place when your mum was at risk? It seems so obvious now, doesn't it?
Yeah. It seems really crazy to me, actually, that it just seems such common sense that you should be able to tell someone when they're in clear danger from quite a dangerous character. It just seems so obvious now. But I'm very glad that at least now it is something that can be done.
Maddie, it's a very brave thing that you're doing to speak out and to do it on live television, given what happened to you. And I'll be led by you as to what you want to tell us about what you remember of that time. And then, if you like, contrast it with what you know now about what your mum should have known then. Can you just sort of tell us what you will about that sequence of events?
Yeah, so what I was aware of at the time is that he'd been in trouble for something before, and it was driving offences, that's what he said. And I, being a child, I took that at face value, and so did my mum, wanting to believe the person that she loved. And I kind of... Sorry,
That's okay. No. You have a little drink of water. Do you want to pick up on this, Karen? I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
You're here and everyone's going to listen to what you're saying. And that's the point,
Absolutely.
isn't it? The experience, which everyone can see for Maddie, is so hard.
Absolutely.
To have gone through and even to know now and try and put into some kind of perspective. It's very hard because it's so personal.
Yeah.
And the reason it's so important that you're here at all is because it will mean people pay more attention. You know, first-hand experience will mean that everyone listens more, frankly, than if you'd done your report without Maddie doing what she's done.
Absolutely. And it's about raising that awareness. There are still people out there who don't know that Clare's Law exists. I've spoken to women at a domestic abuse support group. They didn't know that this scheme is there to help them. So anything we can do to spread that word this morning, that's why we're doing what we're doing today.
And just in terms of the practicalities, the reason we're doing the story in the first place, and Maddie's drawing attention to it, is the delays,
Yes.
isn't it? This is the crucial thing, which is what you want is, if you've got concerns, which is the territory you are going into, you want to be able to go somewhere and have something happen so you can check, which in theory is what was supposed to happen.
And the police have 28 days. They should respond within 28 days, but we're finding that they're taking hundreds of days to respond in some cases.
How comfortable are you, Maddie, about talking about just when the flags were raised, and you could only see it as a baby, as a child, when the flags were raised, what help was available at that time, or who could possibly be spoken to?
From what I remember, my mum did go to the police. She reached out, she called, she had restraining orders put, but it just wasn't enough. He kept turning back up. He kept stalking her, turning up at the house. It was like nothing that was being done was enough to prevent him.
It's interesting because now, like Caroline, you have said the police will listen. And we know that there is improved liaison between victims of domestic violence, coercive control, abusive relationships, or sufferers, I should say. Did your mum feel that she was being listened to because she had those orders in place?
She didn't really tell me necessarily as a child, like, oh, I don't feel like I'm being listened to, but I did feel a sense of frustration. Like, she just wanted to be safe and make sure that I was safe. And I think I did get that sense from her that she didn't feel like she was being taken seriously by the police at times.
Caroline, just tell us a little bit about how the police have reacted to your report. Because often when we do stories, and this is specifically about Clare's Law, but it happens with other things too, they say pressure, the workload, the practicalities of going through each of these incidents and giving it the proper time as they're legally obliged to. What do they say about how it's working in practice?
There has been a 300% rise in the amount of people asking for a Clare's Law in the last 5 years. 300%. So understandably, that's put pressure on an already stretched resource. The National Police Chiefs Council acknowledge that this could be better. They acknowledge that there needs to be a consistency across the UK to make sure that all police forces are responding in the same way. So they are sharing best practice at the minute. The Home Office has responded to say they too are aware there needs to be consistency. But this is about working across the board. It needs to work across the board in a quicker way.
So what's the answer? Because, like you say, the Home Office has responded and said, we expect the police to respond within 28 days. You can expect all you like. Not happening.
Resources.
That's
some
what you're being
forces, for example, in Essex, they have 20 members of staff working on this. Others perhaps don't have as many. And it's about that priority, perhaps, I suppose you would argue, Maddie.
Yeah, everyone deserves a fair shot. Everyone deserves that informed consent. There shouldn't be this disparity.
It's kind of where we started, Maddie, but maybe you'd like to add your thoughts to what Caroline first said about the hope that anybody watching now, anybody who's affected by something or thinks they might be, or the alarm bells are starting to ring. What do you say to those people?
I say, get that disclosure. Don't hold back. It's for people of any gender. Anyone can get a disclosure. But also, something I want to emphasise is if you are in one of those postcodes where it's taking too long, or there are less resources, and the red flags are there, don't hesitate. Your gut is usually right. Please leave. It's not worth risking. Just get out. But I'd say still get the disclosure. Still get it. I think it's still worth using the resource.
And just keep in touch with the police.
Keep in touch with the police.
Yeah, making sure that you're flagging the things that you're seeing as well. It's been really good to talk to you. Thank you for highlighting this. It's obviously so important. Maddie, Caroline, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.